And according to the Himalayan database, I'm one of two people to have ever truly had the summit to myself.
This is
And I did not
amazing.
intend to do that. It's just, you know, life happens sometimes.
From NEPM Studio 61A aboard Battleship, Iowa, this is Scuttlebutt, the official podcast of the National Museum of the Surface Navy in affiliation with the Surface Navy Association's Battleship Iowa chapter. And we are back in the TV studio with some of the usual crowd. I'm Marianne Fengler. I'm run communications at the ship, and next to me I've got.
Mike Etcher, I'm the long title Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Engineer, all that kind of stuff.
And Kyle Aubie, Director of Development, and I'm loving these new chairs.
Kind of fun, huh?
It's just not the same without a little bit of a desk in front of us, but we can use the squeak instead.
Yeah, we'll get the sweet. There you go.
And we have a really fun guest with us today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Brian?
Sure. My name is Brian Dickinson. I served in the U.S. Navy as an aviation rescue swimmer for 6 years, and then got into some mountaineering and got a book coming out. And I guess we'll be talking about all of that stuff.
Yeah, super excited
Right
to do
on.
that. So I'm gonna, since the book is about the rescue swimming, let's come back to that. Let's start out with the really fun stuff. What kind of mountains have you climbed?
um, yeah, so when I got out of the Navy in '99, moved up to the Pacific Northwest and just really got into mountaineering and, doing all the peaks around here, Mount Rainier and all the Cascade peaks, but decided to kick it up a notch and climb the highest peaks on the seven continents. So I was traveling around the world and climbing mountains and also using it for good as well. I was visiting orphanages and bringing my family when I could, and just not trying to get outside of my selfish goals of just standing on top of a mountain, because when you look at a mountain, it's kind of silly. You go up and then you come back down, but there's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, I think Mount Everest was definitely the crux of my life.
Wow.
So it's safe to say that boring goals are in your world. Much like us, we do crazy things here too, and I admire anybody who steps up to the plate like that. What was the prep like? I mean, we've all read and seen some of the videos about climbing, Everest K2 and all of that. I mean, there must have been a ton of prep. I mean, certainly you're in good shape, but there's a lot more to that than just being in good shape.
Yeah, no, it really is. I've been blessed to be able to go around and, tell my story. And I have a book called Blind Descent that captures a lot of it. But what I found is having the conversation with others, being a motivational speaker, and I could tell my story all day, but it's listening to the feedback of other people, because, like you said, everyone does something crazy for that people think is crazy for them. I don't think Everest is crazy because I'm close to that problem, but others say that I'm a lunatic. But the prep it's not one of those mountains where you just show up and climb. I mean, it truly is a lifestyle, and not everyone is wired to do such a thing. As far as the people that have summited it, it's in the low thousands, and there's been 100 billion people to have ever existed on Earth. So I'm not great with math, but there's not a lot of people that are going to get it. So, but yeah, physical, it's there's a ton physically, but honestly, it's the mental, emotional, spiritual of, being away from family and, our crazy lives that we all live. I mean, it's not like, 50 years ago or anything where things were a little, less chaotic, maybe. I mean, I guess it's all relative, but leaving my family and going to Nepal and being immersed in the mountains for 2 months, it's like being on deployment in the military. And I wouldn't say equally as dangerous, but it's dangerous. So you gotta really be aware of all those things and make strong calculated risks, and do the things that are within your control. You train for those and then respond to the things outside of your control, and hopefully success of a mountain is always coming back safe.
So how did you get started in kind of this, I don't know, excursion of mountaineering? How did you really get to be passionate about that, and also then pull in the philanthropic side, for lack of a better phrase, to then support others while you're pursuing these goals?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think that was like a passive way of saying that I'm probably not very smart for putting it out there. So appreciate that, Kyle.
No, well, I mean, I guess just how did you get into it in the first place? It takes a special kind of person, and you're kind of hinting at that with climbing Everest and everything. But really, folks that go out and just appreciate nature and want to just commit themselves to hiking and mountaineering, it's intense and it's nothing light. It's a really it takes a lot of interest and passion for that hobby to really get into it. So how did you get started in doing it?
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of it does come down to how we're wired, and actually and we'll talk about Calm in the Chaos, my book that releases in a few weeks, but that was a major reason of writing it, is this self-reflection of why, and these questions that I've gotten after I survived what we'll talk about on Everest. But yeah, there's the wired piece, and you can do that all, talk about that all day long, but there is more. You can be wired a certain way, but then the actual doing is quite different. What I found is a lot of times when you've dealt with trauma in your life, you actually start chasing that trauma without really realizing it, and putting yourself, close to, being in the red zone, and just operating there and actually finding comfort there. And I think I was not a victim, but that's what was happening without me really realizing it. But there's so much therapy that goes into just being one with nature. And my wife is a Christian counselor, so it's perfect because I clearly need help. But she just we've been immersed in our faith, and just trying to serve others. In my job as a aviation rescue swimmer, it's like the ultimate serving of others. You're risking your life to save someone who's essentially trying to kill you. Sees you as flotation out in the middle of the water. So I think just inadvertently I was just kind of wired this way, and then just kept building on that. And I'm glad that certain things occurred throughout my story, so that I could be have that awareness, and to deal with my own trauma, things that were maybe shaping me a way that I was unaware of, and then being able to step back and help others that may not be aware, or might be just struggling the same way I was.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if I could speak to trauma in that particular way, but I would like to comment on big ideas and doing extraordinary things, because we didn't really understand what we were doing. We had a dream of pulling the ship out of mothballs, and I'm kind of looking for a reaction from both of you. And it was just, in some ways, a technical and a business decision, but it was a big idea too, and it was an extraordinary thing. Literally, I was part of a group that walked away from their families for a better part of a year just to do that, and then to figure out later how much that inspired so many people. It was kind of stunning, actually. We had no clue about that side. We pulled the ship out of mothballs in October of 2011, and my boss and I say this all the time. We woke up to on the ship in the dark. We had not much money. We had the promise of money from the state of Iowa. We had things to do, and within 2 months we were feeding over 100 people a day in the wardroom, just because of the inspiration of what was going on. And so I love the inspiration side of this, and maybe we had trauma too, and I just don't know. But certainly I've got trauma post.
We chase it every day.
So we're familiar with trauma, but I think it's kind of neat to have that kind of story. And again, it really wasn't expected on our part. We thought we were just doing something cool, and we want to do things that have value in our lives too. I've been now personally, and I don't know where you're at, Kyle, but I expect the same of you someday. I'm in 25th year, I think, nonprofits. doing various things, several of them in the maritime world. So, we want to do things of value in our lives as well. So that's my commonality. I can swim too, by the way, not as well as you, but I can swim.
We'll prove it.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, a lot of times we as humans have promptings to do something beyond our comfort.
Yeah.
And I think it's very rare, like yourself, what you did, coming out of mothballs to actually, vocalize that, put yourself out there. There's a vulnerability with that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're taken away from probably a comfortable life that you have, and as well as your family, and they may not understand that. But now, when you're beyond, you may not even know why you had that prompting. You get on the other side of it, and now you realize what the purpose was, and it's so much greater than you could have ever imagined.
Yeah, that kind of nails it.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know, we had no clue. We were doing something cool. We knew that, but how it inspired people was the surprise. I think in many ways.
Well, so Brian, for you, I've started on Calm into Chaos, and I also have, watched a couple of your videos and found out about what Everest turned into for you. Tell them really quick, and then tell them how, like, when you were in the middle of that situation, there's no way you were thinking it was going to inspire people down the road, but how has it since you've been through it?
Okay. So you want me to tell my whole story? And
no, just very quick.
The short version.
The short version.
The short version.
Make them read the book, because it's good stuff.
Yeah.
No. I was definitely not thinking I was inspiring anyone. I was just trying to survive. So just to give the cliff notes of it. So in 2011, I soloed Mount Everest. It was the fourth of the 7 summits that I had climbed around the world. I didn't go as a part of a large group. I was independent. I had some Sherpa support down lower, and I had a Sherpa friend who was going up towards the summit with me. And it's very rare, because on Mount Everest, there's only a couple days where you can actually summit, because you're at 30,000 feet. And the weather is just pretty insane. And my buddy Pasong ended up getting sick. We had a conversation. He ended up going down, so I continued up. And according to the Himalayan database, I'm one of 2 people to have ever truly had the summit to myself. And I did not intend to do that. It's just, life happens sometimes. But I got up there, took the highest selfie, made a radio call, and you can't spend much time up there, maybe an hour. And I just, started heading down, and within, 10 yards or so, I went completely blind. And because there's only a third of the air, a third of the ozone up there, I had cracked my goggles the day prior, ripped out an internal lens, not realizing I probably cut their effectiveness in half. I have blue eyes, so I'm just more susceptible. Anyways, as soon as the sun banked off the ice, it fried my cornea pretty severely. I wouldn't regain my eyesight for about a month and a half. Clearly, I didn't have that amount of time. So without panicking or overthinking the situation, I got up and I just started moving, just hand over hand, finding my way down. There's fixed lines, so I was pulling that rope, coming in and out of anchor points, fell off Hillary Step, which is a 40-foot rock climb, kind of pendulumed, hit the rock, slid down. The entire time I felt this presence around me. I never really thought too much about it. I never felt alone. And I just, I knew 99.99% I was probably not going to survive, but I never once thought about that. I had to get home. I had to get back to my family. And if I was going to die, I was going to die trying. And, one thing with the military, I mean, that's that we train to never panic. We are literally jumping out of a perfectly good helicopter to save the life of someone who's panicking, coming after us to attack us and get control of them. So from breathing, from being oxygen deprived, I had that training, but I also had this faith about me. And again, I never really thought too much about it. I took a major fall on the south summit, the rope shock loaded. I would have fallen for over 2 miles. It's literally 2 miles on each side of you. But that saved my life, that rope. I ended up running out of supplemental oxygen and just really witnessed a miracle at that point. And, just prayed, just God, I can't do this alone. I tried so hard to do it on my own, and I reached a point where I couldn't. And I witnessed a miracle. People around the world were praying. They felt prompted to pray for me at that moment and lifted me up. And it was a miracle. And I tried fumbled around. I couldn't see anything for a spare oxygen bottle that had previously failed, and I got a positive flow. And I just remember as I took like 5 breaths of this air, it burned. It felt like fire re-entering my body. I've never experienced anything like that. And without, again, overthinking it, I just started moving down the mountain. And eventually, it was 7 hours later, everyone down lower at high camp thought the worst had happened. And Pasong actually walked out for that last quarter mile. It's the ice bulge and the highest camp in the world up there in the death zone, and just hugged me. I never saw him coming. He's like, Brian, you alive? And he's like, I'm so sorry I leave you. And I'm like, no, don't worry about it, dude. I'm like, I can't see a thing. So we get back to the tent. I collapse for like 15 hours. My eyes are glued shut. I lost 20 pounds, had black eyes, and it still takes 2 days to get down to base camp. And then it's 38 miles on foot to fly out to Kathmandu. But I was alive, and I was around people, and yeah, just very, very blessed to be alive.
Well, that beats our story.
Yeah.
It's hard to follow that up.
We should have failed. Thinking about the failure side, we should have failed in getting the ship so many times. The story is long, where no money and suddenly the money shows up. We have our own version of the Iowa miracle that occurred here in so many ways, and it really is something that should not have occurred. So we get the combination of the persistence and the belief. What I latch onto is that kind of part of yourself that just won't let go. You know what you need to do. Just keep moving, and that's pretty much how we did it. We should have failed. But ours just doesn't have the dramatic possible 2-mile fall.
Yeah, you're doing yours at sea level. No,
I know.
It's crazy.
I mean, I can fall overboard, but again, I can swim. But we should have failed as well.
So I guess going back to that mental strength and everything. So what were you pulling from with your military experience? What kind of past experiences had you had that you kind of went back to and said, I've been through this, I can keep fighting through and get myself down?
Yeah. So as far as, and you can segue in, but when I tell my story, that is the question.
Yeah.
Why didn't you panic up there? How did you survive? Why are there 200-300 bodies still on the mountain? And that's something I've had to deal with as far as survivor's guilt and understanding that. But that's a big reason that I wanted to write this second book, is to talk about the military training. So as an aviation rescue swimmer, every day you are put to the test. I mean, it's a high attrition rate because most people just don't work well in that environment, without oxygen, underwater, being attacked, being, entangled in shroud lines of a parachute, and trying to disentangle someone with the rotor wash pounding down on you and the noise. And unlike a lot of, military jobs, it's kind of man-on-man, man-to-man combat, because once you leave that helicopter, you're on your own, and it can be one-to-one, one-to-many. But it's the training that is just, forced on us. For us, it's a volunteer job. You can quit anytime, but if you want to get through, it's about remaining calm in the chaos when everything else is coming at you. It's, that situational awareness. It's the fight, flight, freeze. It is, calming your heart, breathing. It is finding a reason to take one more step forward. Like in rescue swimmer school, like something called life saving, and it's changed since I was in. It was a lot of pressure points, take people deep underwater as they're latched onto you, and get control of them with strength and different maneuvers. Now a lot of it's, or I think all of it's above water. They call it water jujitsu, but
Wow.
it's if you panic in those moments, now you have two victims.
Mhm.
If you remain calm, and everything just comes down to remaining calm, just control your breathing, stay calm, don't panic. That's what they would scream at us all the time. Having someone scream at you doesn't
Just stay
make it
calm.
easier. But when you've been through it, and I did 2 deployments to the Persian Gulf on Operation Southern Watch, and plenty of mission sets. Every flight is a potentially traumatic event. I mean, I think just flying in helicopters is traumatic, right?
Mhm.
My first flight ever out of training school, we hit the water. So I mean, it's like welcome to the fleet type of thing. We got out,
Wow.
fortunately, but yeah, just every flight is you're a SAR asset. So you may be doing anti-submarine warfare and CSAR, deploying SEALs or EOD or something to a hot zone, or vert rep, whatever. Just helicopters are so versatile. You do so many different things. But I think it's living in that space, living in that red, that being on the top of Everest and having the most horrific thing I can imagine happen, I was able to find that calm. Because if I was to panic, my heart rate, breathing,
Yes.
everything, I would have probably had some sort of, edema that would have,
Mhm.
given me a heart attack or something.
Yeah, we feel you.
I had to suppress that. I had to containerize it, and it definitely comes out later. And that's the same with any rescues or anything. First responders will admit to that. You have to do what it takes to get through that situation to save a life, even if that life is your own. And then later, that's going to release in some form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, we don't deal with the life and death, but we find ourselves to be stress junkies. A couple of us here, anyways, and
A little bit, yeah.
yeah, you end up always working on the edge there and trying to keep yourself alive and keep yourself calm. Sure, it's a business thing, but even that's kind of speaks to me too.
And once again, we found ourselves in a very interesting conversation that went on quite a bit longer. So we're going to save the second half for another podcast. Be sure to tune in for that one, because Brian got into the inspiration for his new book, Calm in the Chaos, about the adventurous lives of Navy aviation rescue swimmers. And in the meantime, you know the drill. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, topics you'd like us to discuss, please shoot us an email at podcast@labattleship.com, podcast@lawbattleship, or drop something in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for tuning in for Scuttlebutt.